December 22, 1941, Berlin, Germany. 2 weeks after Pearl Harbor, Adolf Hitler sits in a strategy meeting with his military commanders, discussing the implications of America's entry into the war. His generals are confident. America is unprepared. Their army is small. Their industry is focused on civilian production. It will take years before American forces pose a serious threat. But Hitler isn't celebrating. He's read intelligence reports about American industrial capacity, and the numbers terrify him. He tells his staff something they don't want to hear. The Americans can outproduce us 10 to 1. They have resources we can't match, factories we can't bomb, and a population that won't starve under blockade. If we don't defeat them before their industry fully mobilizes, we will lose this war. His commanders dismiss this as pessimism. Germany has conquered most of Europe. Their tanks are superior, their soldiers are experienced, their tactics are proven. How can American industry possibly matter against German military excellence? 3 years later, those same commanders will watch in horror as American-built tanks, aircraft, and artillery overwhelm German forces through sheer quantity. They'll see German units surrendering because they've run out of ammunition, while American units fire unlimited artillery barrages. They'll realize Hitler was right. American industrial capacity was the weapon Germany couldn't defeat. This is the story of how American factories transformed from producing cars and consumer goods into the world's greatest military arsenal, mass-producing weapons in quantities that the Axis forces couldn't match, couldn't counter, and ultimately couldn't survive, turning the United States into what Franklin Roosevelt called the arsenal of democracy. The story begins with a problem. America in 1940 is unprepared for war. The U.S. Army ranks 18th in the world in size, smaller than Belgium's army. The Army Air Corps has fewer than 3,000 aircraft, most obsolete. American tank production is essentially zero. The Army operates approximately 400 tanks total, compared to Germany's 5,000. American industry is producing cars, refrigerators, radios, and countless consumer goods, but virtually no military equipment. If war comes, America needs to transform its economy from civilian production to military production faster and more completely than any nation has ever done. The challenge seems insurmountable. Modern weapons are complex. A bomber like the B-17 Flying Fortress contains over 100,000 parts. A battleship contains millions of components. Traditional military contractors build weapons using craft methods with skilled workers hand-fitting parts. Production rates are low, perhaps 1 aircraft per week from a factory. Scaling this to wartime needs seems impossible. America needs thousands of aircraft monthly, tens of thousands of tanks, hundreds of ships. How can you produce these quantities using traditional craft methods? The answer comes from an unexpected source: automobile manufacturers. Henry Ford, William Knudsen of General Motors, and other auto executives understand mass production in ways traditional military manufacturers don't. They've spent decades perfecting assembly line techniques that produce cars in quantities that would have seemed impossible to earlier generations. Ford's River Rouge plant produces a completed automobile every minute. If you can mass-produce cars, they argue, you can mass-produce tanks and aircraft. The techniques are similar. Break complex assemblies into simple, repeated tasks, standardize components for interchangeability, move work to workers rather than workers to work, and optimize every step for efficiency. The Roosevelt administration, recognizing that traditional military contractors can't produce weapons fast enough, recruits civilian industry to war production. William Knudsen leaves General Motors to head the Office of Production Management, coordinating military production across American industry. His assignment is unprecedented: transform the world's largest consumer goods economy into a military production powerhouse in less than 2 years. Failure means losing the war before American forces can deploy in meaningful numbers. The conversion begins in 1940-1941, before Pearl Harbor, under Lend-Lease programs supplying Britain and the Soviet Union. American factories start producing tanks, aircraft, and weapons for allies, while simultaneously expanding capacity for eventual American needs. This early mobilization gives America a crucial head start. Factories are already converting, workers are already training, production methods are already being refined when war officially begins in December 1941. Tank production illustrates the transformation. In 1940, American tank production is approximately 300 tanks for the entire year. By 1942, production exceeds 25,000 tanks annually. By 1943, over 29,000 tanks. Total production from 1940 to 1945, approximately 88,000 tanks. This represents not just increased production, but completely revolutionized manufacturing methods. The Chrysler Tank Arsenal, opened in 1941, is purpose-built for tank mass production. The facility covers 113 acres under one roof, employs over 25,000 workers at peak, and produces approximately 18,000 M3 and M4 Sherman tanks during the war. At peak production, completed tanks roll off the assembly line every 45 minutes. The Sherman tank becomes the symbol of American mass production philosophy. It's not the best tank in the war. German Tigers and Panthers have better armor and more powerful guns. But the Sherman is good enough, and more importantly, it's producible in vast quantities. Sherman production eventually reaches approximately 50,000 tanks across multiple variants. This quantity overwhelms German advantages. German tanks might be superior individually, but Germany produces approximately 25,000 tanks total during the entire war. America produces twice as many Shermans alone, plus tens of thousands of other armored vehicles. The production philosophy is deliberate, designed for mass production rather than maximum performance. The Sherman uses a radial aircraft engine because they're available in quantity. America is producing tens of thousands of aircraft engines, so using that engine in tanks leverages existing production capacity. The Sherman's design emphasizes reliability and maintainability over pure combat performance. It can be produced by workers with minimal training, can be maintained by crews with basic mechanical knowledge, and can operate with logistic systems supporting other American vehicles. These pragmatic decisions enable quantity, and quantity becomes its own quality. Aircraft production follows similar patterns, but faces greater challenges because aircraft are more complex than tanks. A bomber contains approximately 100,000 parts manufactured to precise tolerances. Traditional aircraft manufacturing is artisanal, skilled craftsmen hand-fitting components, solving problems individually, producing perhaps one aircraft weekly. Scaling this to produce hundreds of bombers monthly seems impossible, but again, automotive manufacturing techniques provide the solution. The Willow Run bomber plant, built by Ford Motor Company, demonstrates mass production applied to aircraft. The facility is 1 mile long, literally 5,472 feet of continuous factory space. Inside, B-24 Liberator bombers move through assembly stations on a moving line, just like automobiles. Components flow to assembly points, workers perform specialized tasks they've practiced thousands of times. At peak production in 1944, Willow Run produces a completed B-24 every 55 minutes, faster than most traditional aircraft factories produce one aircraft per week. Total B-24 production reaches approximately 18,500 aircraft, with Willow Run producing nearly half. The scale of American aircraft production is staggering. In 1939, American factories produce approximately 2,000 military aircraft. In 1944, the peak year, production exceeds 96,000 aircraft. That's 264 aircraft per day, 11 per hour, one every 5 minutes.
This production includes bombers, fighters, transports, trainers, reconnaissance aircraft, and numerous other types. The variety is as impressive as the quantity. America doesn't just produce one design in huge numbers, but dozens of different types simultaneously.
The numbers overwhelm Axis production completely. Germany produces approximately 120,000 aircraft total from 1939 to 1945. Japan produces approximately 76,000 aircraft. Combined Axis production is roughly 200,000 aircraft over 6 years. America alone produces approximately 300,000 aircraft in the same period. When you add British and Soviet production, much of it enabled by American materials and machine tools, Allied aircraft production exceeds Axis production by perhaps 4 to 1. Ship production shows American industrial capacity at its most impressive. Merchant ships traditionally take months or years to build using traditional shipyard methods. The Liberty Ship program revolutionizes this through mass production techniques applied to shipbuilding. Liberty ships are standardized cargo vessels, identical designs, prefabricated components, modular construction, assembly line methods. American shipyards produce approximately 2,700 Liberty ships between 1941 and 1945, an average of 2 ships per day at peak production. The fastest construction time? 4 days and 15 hours for the SS Robert E. Peary, from keel laying to launch. This is insane by traditional shipbuilding standards, but it demonstrates what American industry can achieve when mass production techniques are fully implemented. Naval vessel production is equally impressive. America builds 27 fleet aircraft carriers, 115 escort carriers, 349 destroyers, 498 destroyer escorts, and 203 submarines during the war, plus countless support vessels, amphibious craft, and patrol boats. Japan sinks approximately 350 American warships during the war, horrific losses, representing thousands of sailors killed. But American shipyards build replacements faster than Japan can sink them. By 1943, American naval strength is increasing despite combat losses, an impossible situation for Japan, whose industrial capacity can't replace losses. Artillery and ammunition production demonstrate American capacity to supply consumables on scales previously unimaginable. Artillery pieces wear out from use, gun barrels erode after firing thousands of rounds. Ammunition is consumed at incredible rates. A single artillery bombardment can expend thousands of rounds. American factories produce approximately 4,000 field artillery pieces monthly at peak production. Ammunition production exceeds 20 million rounds monthly. The quantities ensure American forces can fire unlimited artillery whenever needed, while German forces increasingly ration ammunition because their factories can't produce enough. Small arms production shows American capacity applied to relatively simple weapons. The M1 Garand rifle, standard American infantry weapon, is produced in quantities exceeding 4 million rifles. The M1 carbine, lighter weapon for support troops, reaches approximately 6 million produced. Machine guns, submachine guns, pistols, all produced in millions. American soldiers never lack weapons, while Axis forces increasingly arm troops with captured weapons or obsolete designs because their factories can't produce enough standard weapons. The production numbers for specific weapon types are mind-boggling. 88,000 tanks, 300,000 aircraft, 2,700 Liberty ships, over 8,000 naval vessels, 4 million rifles and carbines, 2.6 million machine guns, 41 billion rounds of ammunition, 2.4 million military trucks. These aren't just statistics. Each number represents weapons and equipment that had to be designed, materials sourced, components manufactured, assemblies completed, quality controlled, transported, and delivered to forces worldwide.
The organizational challenge of coordinating this production is staggering. Thousands of factories, millions of workers, complex supply chains, transportation networks, inventory management systems, all coordinating to ensure materials flow efficiently from raw resources to finished weapons in combat zones. The workforce transformation is equally remarkable. American industrial workforce grows from approximately 46 million in 1940 to 54 million by 1943, but more significantly, the composition changes dramatically. Women enter the industrial workforce in unprecedented numbers. Approximately 6 million women work in war industries by 1943, comprising about 40% of aircraft industry workers. The Rosie the Riveter propaganda campaign successfully recruits women from domestic work into factory jobs. These women operate complex machinery, read technical drawings, perform precision work, and make quality decisions affecting combat operations. Production records show women workers are at least as productive and quality conscious as male workers, demolishing pre-war assumptions about women's industrial capabilities.
African Americans also enter industrial work in large numbers, though facing discrimination and segregated facilities. Before the war, most defense contractors excluded black workers through explicit discrimination. Labor shortages forced partial integration. By 1944, approximately 8% of war industry workers are African American. They face racism from white coworkers, discriminatory housing, and limited advancement opportunities, yet they produce weapons to the same quality standards as everyone else. This wartime integration, however incomplete and contested, laid groundwork for post-war civil rights movements. Quality control becomes critical in mass production. Traditional craft methods rely on skilled workers who know how to build things correctly. Mass production uses semi-skilled workers performing repetitive tasks. They need systems ensuring quality despite limited expertise. American factories implement statistical process control, monitoring production to detect variations before they become defects. They empower line workers to stop production when problems appear. They inspect at multiple stages rather than only at completion. These quality systems ensure mass-produced weapons meet specifications despite being built by workers with minimal training. The results are impressive. American-built weapons are generally reliable and effective. German propaganda claims American equipment is inferior, cheaply built, poorly designed, inadequate for combat. Reality shows otherwise. Sherman tanks are mechanically reliable, requiring less maintenance than German tanks. American aircraft have excellent operational readiness rates. Typically 70 to 80% of aircraft are mission-capable compared to 50 to 60% for Luftwaffe units. American trucks run for tens of thousands of miles with routine maintenance. The weapons aren't perfect. Shermans catch fire when penetrated. Some aircraft have design flaws, but they're good enough, and there are so many that local deficiencies don't matter strategically. The logistics of supporting production are themselves achievements. Raw materials must flow continuously to factories: steel, aluminum, rubber, copper, petroleum, countless others. America's geographic advantages help enormously. The country has abundant natural resources, agricultural capacity, and secure borders, preventing enemy attacks on industry. But resources still require coordination. The War Production Board manages allocation of strategic materials, ensuring critical factories receive priority. Transportation networks move materials and finished goods efficiently despite wartime strains. The entire industrial ecosystem functions as an integrated system, not just isolated factories. Financial dimensions are staggering. War production costs enormous amounts. The United States spends approximately $296 billion on the war effort, roughly 40% of GDP at peak. This is financed through taxes, war bonds, and deficit spending. The government essentially underwrites industrial expansion, providing capital for new factories, equipment, and tooling. Private industry produces weapons, but government funding enables the expansion, making mass production possible. This public-private partnership leverages American industrial capacity while managing costs that individual companies couldn't afford. Technology transfer accelerates production. American industry shares manufacturing techniques across companies. Competitors in peacetime become collaborators in war. Ford shares production methods with General Motors. Aircraft manufacturers exchange technical information. The government encourages this cooperation because it accelerates learning and spreads best practices. Industries that normally guard trade secrets as competitive advantages share everything to increase overall production. This cooperation eliminates redundant problem-solving and accelerates production ramp-up. German reactions to American production reveal their growing desperation. Early in the war, German military leaders dismiss American industrial potential. They believe superior German technology and tactics will defeat American numerical advantages. By 1943, this confidence evaporates. German soldiers report American artillery barrages that continue for hours, something German forces rarely experience because their ammunition supplies can't support such expenditures. German pilots encounter formations of 1,000 American bombers escorted by hundreds of fighters, impossible to defeat regardless of skill because numbers overwhelm tactics. Albert Speer, German armaments minister, writes in his memoirs that Germany lost the production war before military defeat became inevitable. Germany mobilized industry effectively considering their resources, but they couldn't match American capacity. Germany produces approximately 25,000 tanks during the entire war, impressive considering their smaller industrial base. But America produces 88,000. Germany manufactures 120,000 aircraft, a remarkable achievement, but America builds 300,000. Every category shows similar disparities. Speer concludes that once American industry fully mobilized, German defeat was mathematically certain, regardless of battlefield tactics or strategic decisions. Hitler's private statements reveal his understanding of this reality. In conversations with close associates in 1942 and 1943, Hitler repeatedly expresses fear of American industrial capacity. He tells staff that Germany must win quickly before American production reaches full capacity. Because once America's factories achieve maximum output, Germany cannot win through military means alone. These private admissions contradict his public statements claiming inevitable German victory. Hitler understands what his propaganda denies. Industrial capacity determines modern war outcomes as much as military prowess. Japanese leaders make similar miscalculations initially, but recognize their error faster. Admiral Yamamoto, architect of Pearl Harbor, warns Japanese leadership that attacking America is suicidal because American industrial capacity is 10 times greater than Japan's. He's ignored by militarists who believe Japanese fighting spirit will overcome material disadvantages. By 1943, Japanese leaders realized Yamamoto was right. American factories are producing weapons faster than Japan can destroy them. Japanese pilots flying obsolete aircraft face Americans flying new planes produced in seemingly endless quantities. Japanese ships sail without adequate fuel because American submarines sink tankers faster than Japan can build replacements. The material imbalance becomes so extreme that Japanese tactical skill becomes increasingly irrelevant. The psychological impact on Axis forces is devastating. German and Japanese soldiers initially fight with confidence, believing their training and equipment are superior. As American-produced weapons flood battlefields in overwhelming quantities, this confidence erodes. German soldiers watch American artillery expend ammunition in hours that would supply German units for weeks. They see destroyed American equipment replaced immediately while German losses accumulate irreplaceably. They realize they're fighting an enemy who can absorb losses and continue fighting, while their own forces weaken progressively. This knowledge is demoralizing.
Soldiers fighting a losing war of attrition lose effectiveness regardless of individual courage. The strategic implications extend beyond battlefields. American production capacity allows simultaneous operations in multiple theaters: Europe, Pacific, Mediterranean, China, Burma, India, something Axis powers cannot match. Germany and Japan must choose where to concentrate limited resources, creating vulnerabilities elsewhere. America produces enough to supply operations everywhere simultaneously, plus support allies through Lend-Lease. This strategic flexibility, enabled by production capacity, allows Allied commanders to maintain offensive pressure continuously, while Axis forces fight defensively, trying to stop multiple threats simultaneously. Lend-Lease demonstrates American production creating strategic advantages beyond U.S. forces. America supplies the Soviet Union with approximately 400,000 trucks, 11,000 aircraft, 13,000 tanks, plus food, fuel, and raw materials. These supplies allow Soviet industry to focus on producing tanks and artillery, while American production provides logistics vehicles and support equipment. Without American trucks, Soviet offensives would have stalled repeatedly from logistics failures. Without American food, Soviet civilians would have starved in greater numbers. American production doesn't just equip American forces, it sustains Allied war efforts globally. Britain receives similar support: American-built aircraft, ships, tanks, ammunition, food, raw materials. Britain's island economy, blockaded and bombed, cannot produce enough domestically to sustain war efforts. American production fills gaps, allowing Britain to continue fighting while rebuilding strength. Churchill later acknowledges that without American production supporting Britain from 1940 to 1941, British defeat was probable. American industrial capacity kept Britain in the war during the critical period when they fought essentially alone. The conversion from war production to peacetime economy presents challenges equal to initial mobilization. Victory in Europe in May 1945 and Japan in August 1945 triggers immediate contract cancellations. Orders for thousands of aircraft, ships, and tanks evaporate overnight. Factories that operated 24-hour shifts suddenly have no work. Millions of workers face unemployment. The feared post-war depression doesn't materialize, partly because wartime industrial expansion created enormous productive capacity that converts to civilian production. Factories that built bombers build airliners. Shipyards that built warships build cargo vessels. Tank plants build tractors and construction equipment. The industrial capacity built for war becomes foundation for post-war prosperity. Women workers face difficult transitions. Many are forced from factory jobs to make room for returning servicemen. The Rosie the Riveter, who was praised as patriotic during wartime, is suddenly told her proper place is domestic. Many women don't want to leave industrial work. They've proven themselves capable, earned good wages, experienced independence. Being pushed back to domestic roles or lower-paying women's work feels like a betrayal after being told they were essential to victory. The post-war period sees many women workers attempting to maintain industrial employment despite pressure to leave, with mixed success.
African American workers face similar discrimination. Having proven themselves in war industries, they expected better post-war opportunities. Instead, many are pushed back to lower-paying jobs or unemployment as white workers reclaim industrial positions. The disconnect between wartime rhetoric, claiming all Americans are fighting for freedom, and post-war reality, denying equal opportunity to minority workers who contributed to victory, creates frustration and anger that fuels emerging civil rights movements. The technological legacy of wartime production extends far beyond military applications. Manufacturing techniques developed for weapons production, precision machining, quality control systems, material science advances, logistics optimization become foundations for post-war industries. The aluminum industry, expanded enormously for aircraft production, enables post-war aviation boom. Electronics manufacturing, refined for military equipment, enables consumer electronics industries. Mass production techniques, perfected on weapons, apply to automobiles, appliances, and countless consumer goods. American post-war economic dominance derives partly from industrial capabilities built during wartime mobilization. The geopolitical consequences are profound. America emerges from World War II as the world's dominant industrial power. While European and Asian industries lie in ruins from bombing and invasion, American factories are intact and operating at full capacity. This industrial advantage, combined with financial resources and technological leadership, makes America the global superpower for decades. The Marshall Plan, American aid rebuilding Europe, is possible only because American industrial capacity can produce enough both for domestic needs and massive foreign assistance. American global influence in the post-war period derives significantly from industrial capacity demonstrated and expanded during World War II. The weapons Hitler feared weren't single advanced designs. Germany had jet aircraft, advanced tanks, rocket technology that matched or exceeded American developments. What Hitler feared was the sheer quantity of good enough weapons American factories could produce and sustain indefinitely. A Sherman tank might not match a Tiger one-on-one, but 5 Shermans will defeat one Tiger through numerical superiority. An individual B-17 might be shot down, but 1,000 B-17s overwhelm defenses through sheer numbers. American production created situations where Axis forces faced numerical odds that tactical skill couldn't overcome. The lesson extends beyond World War II. Industrial capacity matters in modern warfare, possibly more than any other single factor. Advanced technology is valuable, skilled soldiers are essential, brilliant strategy matters, but none of these elements function without industrial capacity producing weapons, ammunition, fuel, food, spare parts, and countless other supplies that keep forces fighting. Germany and Japan had skilled soldiers and some advanced technology, but they couldn't produce enough of anything to sustain multi-year global war against enemies with superior industrial capacity. American mass production philosophy, good enough, in sufficient quantity, sustainably producible, proved superior to German perfection philosophy, best possible in whatever quantity achievable. Germany designed weapons to maximum performance specifications regardless of production complexity. The Tiger tank was magnificent but required over 300,000 man-hours to build. The Panther tank had excellent armor and firepower but complex transmission that required skilled mechanics and broke frequently. German aircraft were often outstanding performers but difficult to manufacture and maintain. This pursuit of perfection limited production and created logistics nightmares. America designed for mass production first, performance second. The Sherman was good enough, adequate armor, reliable mechanics, simple to operate and maintain, manufacturable by semi-skilled workers. The Jeep was basic but reliable and produced in quantities exceeding 600,000. The C-47 transport aircraft wasn't the best aircraft, but it was reliable and produced in quantities exceeding 10,000. American doctrine accepted that good enough in vast quantities defeats perfect in limited numbers. This philosophy leveraged American industrial strengths, enormous productive capacity, skilled logistics management, engineering focused on manufacturability, rather than trying to match German engineering perfection. The human cost of this production miracle shouldn't be forgotten. Workers died in industrial accidents, factory work is dangerous, and wartime production pressure increased risks. People worked brutal hours under harsh conditions, sacrificing health for production goals. Families were disrupted when women entered factories, and traditional gender roles shifted because women entered factories.
Communities faced housing shortages, overcrowding, and social disruption when defense workers migrated to factory towns. The production miracle was built on genuine sacrifices by millions of ordinary Americans who worked, often under difficult conditions, because they believed their labor contributed to victory.
The story of American mass production winning World War II is ultimately about leveraging national advantages systematically. America had geographic security. Oceans protected industry from enemy attack. America had resources, raw materials, agricultural capacity, energy. America had population, enough workers to staff factories and military simultaneously. And critically, America had industrial culture. Decades of experience with mass production, engineering education, technological innovation, organizational management. These advantages were latent until mobilization focused them toward military production. Once focused, they created industrial capacity the Axis powers couldn't match or counter regardless of their military skill or tactical brilliance. The weapons Hitler feared weren't individual designs, but the American industrial system that could produce anything in quantities that overwhelmed Axis capabilities. When German soldiers saw endless columns of American trucks, knew American artillery could fire unlimited ammunition, watched American bombers appear in thousand-plane formations, they understood they were fighting not just an army, but an entire industrial civilization mobilized for war. That understanding that they faced enemies who could replace every loss and produce more was as demoralizing as any battlefield defeat. American industry didn't just produce weapons, it produced inevitable victory through quantities that made Axis defeat mathematically certain once American factories reached full capacity. If this story revealed how industrial might defeats military skill when production overwhelms tactics, hit that like button. Comment, did you know American factories produced more weapons than all Axis nations combined? Share this with anyone who thinks wars are won only on battlefields. They need to understand that factories win wars as much as soldiers. Until next time, remember, in modern warfare, the nation that can produce more, faster, and sustainably will defeat the nation with better individual weapons but insufficient quantity. This is Undiscovered World War II, where we reveal the hidden truths that changed history.